Despite the sour look, we are actually pretty happy with our dogs randomizer, and we think it's time to publish. Well, what do we do from here? So the built-in way to do it is to go into the publish icon, and you get this pop-up. I don't use these at all. I make sure I've got my green checks, and then I go export file. And then I export it somewhere. So maybe I'll go to my desktop, exports, dogs. Fine, I think that's a good name for it. Save. And now what I'll get is just an AR export file. And the smaller the better. There's a difference between the size of an effect in terms of its maximum size for what the user is going to load in versus the size of the AR export file. The AR export file has a limit of about 40 megabytes as of this video. But that is not reflective of the size limitation you're under with Metaspark Studio for the effect itself as it's supposed to load on a user's phone. That is more like 4 megabytes. So you're pretty restricted there. Got to be creative. But now that I have this file, I can click and drag this into a new window, which I will show you. And the benefit of doing it this way and not using the built-in interface to publish or update a new effect is that this is much easier if you are going to work with other people at all or share the effect. You can just give them a file, and if they have any comfort level, they can take it from there. So that gives you an option to offer them. And I actually version these out. So I'll do dogs 1, and then dogs 2, dogs 3, dogs 4. If I get kickback or just adjustments need to come in, and we're in the process where we're almost ready to go live, but there are little tweaks to make, I find that method, it works well, and it kind of gives me a version control where I can reference previous effect sizes if I need to, or effect files if I need to. So that's just a methodology that I use, but you certainly don't have to, and you can use that built-in pop-up that it shows. If you use the built-in pop-up, you'll have to add a video here. The video has to be captured in the effect itself. So it's not just a screen capture from your phone. You have to be in your Instagram or Facebook app doing a test link, which I'll show you, and recording the video there. And if you're working with other people, it's important to communicate that if it's a Facebook or Instagram effect, that video is going to be publicly seen. So you might not want to have somebody record it that isn't comfortable being on video. And if you're promoting something, you might, if you can, get an influencer, or if you're doing a film, one of the stars of the film, or someone to actually record the effect. And this can be replaced later. So there's also a world where you upload something just for now, or FPO, for placement only, and then replace it later. And you can do that. It does have to be approved. So there's a period of time where it's being approved by the meta team. But once it is approved, it will automatically replace the old video. So let me show you the manual method that I like to use. So this page is your Metaspark Hub page. And if you have a Facebook account, you have a Metaspark Hub page. It's at facebook.com/sparkarhub/effects for now. There are a couple of things I want to point out about this interface. One, you will get notices like this because this platform, much like the software platform, is not static. They do change how they have organized things, where you find things. It's a moving target as well. And you can get some notices to that effect that can be a little concerning. And you'll see here I have this effect that I didn't advertise or do anything with, but just kind of went through the process myself back in the day. And it was just a which tree are you kind of randomizer. It was accepted. And because they keep changing the platform and such, I got a notice that it needed an update if I wanted to keep it around. Also, it used to be you could see multiple platforms could be represented within your hub. That's no longer true. Your Facebook hub and your Instagram hub are now different, and you access that here. You get your pull down here, and you'll see an Instagram page. If you select that, you get a list of things. You see here where trees accepted needs an update. Now here, previously accepted or previously uploaded platform effects prior to their adjustments will still show both icons. In any case, I'm going to start back at the Facebook account page. The important thing to note here, and this is not for when you're just publishing an effect, but when you're going over one that's already been accepted or is in review, is once you are live, you have your Insights page. And Insights just show you kind of what you'd expect to see, basic metrics, conversion funnel. It's very markety. So if you are using these for ads, or you're trying to get the user to do something other than just have fun interacting with your effect, this is where you get all that data, your Insights page. Details is important because you might want to hide the effect if you're on Instagram. For some people want to create the effects but don't want them tied to their personal account. That's where you find that option for that, is in details. You'll notice, however, it's not relevant for this particular one because they have segregated where Facebook and Instagram effects live. The files associated with the effect, and you see this effect no longer works on all devices because they have updated their app player. Activity log, not much to say about this effect, pretty self-explanatory. If you're to open this up, this is where you would update. If I wanted to update trees, I would hit here, and this is going to look a lot like the actual publish effect button that I'm going to show you. You give it a name. This is where you actually replace the file with whatever you fixed in the file or updated to the latest version. Specific platforms only. It's only going to work in this case on Facebook. Categories, you can enter these. I'm going to be very honest about categories and keywords. I don't know of anyone that finds their effects by searching for them. It's usually by seeing somebody doing something that they like and then trying it. So I do enter stuff for these, but I don't make too big a deal out of it. I'll just leave it at that. Your video file, as it says, has to be an MP4, and they've got a typo. MOV, WebM, maximum 32 meg. It does need to be vertical as well. It can't be landscape, and it can't be a screen capture. It has to be in the effect. For the icon, you can pull a video thumbnail. I don't know anyone that does that. You're going to want to upload an image. I've included the same list of available templates that they have on their help section in this course. So you have an Illustrator, Photoshop, and Sketch file that will give you guidelines for this. But basically, it's just a square, not a circle. It crops it automatically. So a square that is, 250 by 250. No transparency, so make it like a JPEG, or a PNG is fine as long as you don't have any transparency on it, because for whatever reason they don't support transparency. And you just keep in mind that your stuff is going to get cropped into this center framing. So if you have stuff that's bleeding up here in your design, it's going to get cropped out. You want to make your icon a little smaller than the boundaries of your square and keep it in the center here. And if you have Photoshop or Illustrator or Sketch, you'll see the guidelines they offer for that. Publication date, this is a nice thing about Metaspark Studio, is that You can choose to just have it go live as soon as QA approves it, or you can set a date and time. And you can make that date and time relevant to the user's time zone if you want, and an end date if you want. So if you're making something that's just for an event, this is a really helpful thing that is not offered on Effect House. You click submit, and then it goes back into QA. So like I said, this is very similar to when you are just first creating and publishing your effect. Let's look at that real quick. Back to effects. On my Facebook, I want to publish a new effect. I'm going to go over here, publish effect. Just what we saw. I'm going to call this test dogs. Choose file. Where were we? Desktop, exports, dogs, open. It's going to take a second here to upload that. And it's going to probably give us some messages, or it could give us some messages. I was pretty happy with that. The first thing I would do once it goes through that is to click save. This also, it's important to save this stuff once you replace it. It's not automatically live and available for you to preview if you don't remember to save. Now that that is saved, what I can do is test on a device, and now this is my testing link. I can test this myself, or up to 50 users can share this link. And if they click this link, it will prompt them to open up their Facebook camera and test it. It says 50 users remaining, and that's true, but you can always just click this and get a new link, and then you'll get a fresh 50. So you effectively do have, infinite tests if you needed. I've got that. All platforms is not, it's true. No, this is a moving target, so I hesitate to comment too much on it. It's something you have to keep an eye out. I think for right now, and as of this video, it's safest to just get in your head that you're going to make 2 effect pages for each effect. One for Facebook, one for Instagram, unless you don't care about having one on the other. In this case, this is Facebook. And it's just a straight up selfie effect. We're not doing anything special with video calling. Public. Link only. Self-explanatory. Most people are going to have a public thing because they want the world to see and interact with their effect, but you don't have to. Categories and keywords. I do enter these. They are pretty self-explanatory about what they are. I do enter 4. I don't worry too much about it. Keywords, same idea. I've never used 20 keywords. I just do a handful. Again, it needs to be a vertical video captured in your effect. Same typo. I would also custom craft an icon. And I've actually found that if you use something like Midjourney and do a prompt that specifies a pure white background, you get a lot of flexibility in creating an icon that you can adjust the colors to the background of and so forth. Because sometimes AI-assisted art will try to make things dimensional unless you really lock it down. But you can, and you might want that for your icon, but you can also get good 2D flat icons out of systems like that too. Publication date, as soon as possible at set date time. Either way, you click submit, and then you get a screen telling you it'll be about 24 hours. And this did not used to be true. It could sometimes take more than a business week, more than 2 business weeks to get approval or any kind of feedback. And now they're much faster. So during the beginning of the pandemic, they got hit and things slowed way down with tests and approvals. Now you'll hear back pretty soon either way, if you're approved or not. If you're not approved, it's very likely they will not tell you why. So you have to kind of go back over their guidelines and figure out what's going on. Their AR content, what they allow and won't allow, is a moving target, but generally speaking, you can't promote anything illegal. You can't promote alcohol, tobacco, weed, pharmaceutical drugs. It can't be sexual in nature. You can make jokes around these things, but they have to be pretty broad, not very on the nose, or you'll probably get dinged. It used to be that you couldn't have like a title treatment that was static. Everything had to be tied to your head and interactive. We've certainly had approvals for effects that for which that was no longer the case, and it was just a static text and images, and those were approved. It also depends on your client. If you are working with people that are big clients, that does act as a factor in their approval process, especially in terms of speed. And you can't do anything that's discriminatory seeming. This is also why I think like facial mesh stuff or anything that changes the appearance of a person, it can be a danger zone sometimes. It just depends on how you present it. Leaning into the fantasy element of an effect when you're doing things like that, I think is pretty safe. But staying real world and making adjustments like that to a person's face can get you dinged. Guns aren't usually going to work. Knives, weapons. If there are exceptions, like, the Infinity Gauntlet is definitely a weapon, but you would get away with having that approved. And things like that to keep in mind. So it's without drilling into help and trying to get a human being to get back to you. If you don't get approved, there's probably some kind of content change you need to make. Looking at Instagram here, I've changed to Instagram. And we see here trees just on Instagram, insights for it, lifetime because it's no longer active. Yeah, got a lot more opens on Instagram than Facebook. Wasn't promoting it or testing it or doing anything with it. But that's, as you saw from Facebook, it's the same interface. They've just segregated where the stuff lives. And as you can see, I have a lot more stuff that didn't make it, did not proceed through. And that's pretty much it. So once you go through that web interface, publishing an effect on Instagram is the same kind of data. The things to be aware of with Instagram and Facebook is that they will require that, and I mentioned this before, but that video that you create on Meta could be public facing. So just keep in mind when your model, yourself or your model you get to demonstrate the effect, might end up be public facing. With Effect House, that is not necessarily the case. You don't necessarily have a place where someone goes and sees a person using your effect. It's rather an internal QA process for them. With Meta, it's both. It's internal QA and what the public can see. If you are working with a client, you're not solo with this, there are options on Facebook to add someone to a permissions group so that they can add effects on behalf of somebody else. This is not available for Instagram, and because of this, and because often when I am working with other people, they want an effect that's available for both platforms, I do not even bother. Actually go through the process of acquiring login access from them, which is a security and safety concern to talk about, but that makes life much easier ultimately for the client that I'm working with, because people do not want to deal with this. This is a big hassle. It's a job that you create for somebody else to have to do that can get tied up in the internal processes of the company they work at, and ends up being a much bigger problem than if you just log in under supervision and upload your stuff and set it and forget it. That's just honest experience talking there. It's not that there's anything wrong with doing these things. This is a perfectly reasonable workflow to advocate for and to have available, and it's good, but it's just not what happens. What happens, in my experience, is you end up just working directly with someone that you're working for to end up uploading it and getting it into QA yourself, as opposed to going through permissions group and stuff. I have had to go through this kind of process before. It's just been very rare. It's just more than anybody else wants to deal with, especially if you're kind of a creator or worker for this client or company or person. They're just going to say, well, just log in and upload it, or something to that effect. That's been what has been happening lately, especially with the segregation of Facebook and Instagram. It's just a bit of a hassle. And the nice thing about Facebook also, if you do want or able to advocate to do this method, is that with Facebook, Facebook pages can be effect owners and do not require an actual person to be the owner. And that's much easier for people to make the page, give you access to the page as opposed to an account. And in Instagram, it's more been just account access. So as I've been talking about this, I'm sure some warning bells would go off in your mind, because that is a potentially, big issue. But it's just, I don't know how else to say it. It's just been the real world experience, is that even big companies aren't necessarily interested in following those procedures. They will opt for something a little bit easier, particularly if they have reason to have good faith in you. But that about covers it for the process of uploading to Metaspark. And Effect House, as you'll see by the video length, is a much faster process. There's much less to do, but much less available to you from a configurability perspective. So pros and cons for sure. And that's where we'll stop it here. Oh, one more thing. If you don't see what you need in your account list, then you need to make sure, then you need to go into the Meta Accounts Center, which is accountcenter.facebook.com/profiles, and make sure you've added a profile account here into Account Center. Once you do that, it will be available again in your list. And that gets us going. You're off to the races now.